The video game world, as far as consoles are concerned, seems to be at a crossroads right now as of January 2012. And at the same time, it also seems to be entering uncharted waters. I mean, the situation that all three systems now find themselves in is pretty unique, as it is for the developers who make games for those systems too. I mean, PS3, Wii, those systems are going to be 6 years old this year, and Xbox 360, that's going to be 7 years old in 2012. And tradition and these console cycles, as we've known them thus far, would dictate that all three of these systems ought to have launched, have replacements sometime between 2010 and 2011. But instead, we have only one system set to launch in 2012, and the other two consoles aren't even beginning to build anticipation for replacements, with a launch from Sony or Microsoft not even to be reasonably expected until late 2013, if not much later. So, what's changed so drastically? Why does the landscape seem so strange and new compared to any previous generation at this point? And something's definitely shifting in the air, and what would seem to be the eighth generation, is it really? I mean, or is what we're seeing from all three developers not really a shift into a next generation as we've noted thus far, but into a distinct and separate phase of the current seventh generation? I mean, whether you personally call it the eighth generation or not, the launch of a new home console would dictate that a new era in the home console business has begun. So, why is Nintendo making their move so early? Why are Microsoft and Sony seemingly sitting on their hands instead of getting their long in development 8th gen systems out as soon as possible to drown out the excitement surrounding Wii U? Well, in Nintendo's case, the answer is obvious. Nintendo is pretty much as close as any console manufacturer has ever come to complete market saturation. I mean, Wii has sold, what is it, 94 million units globally, and the com- I mean, they've completely dominated the home console space. I mean, whether you like Nintendo or not, Wii's completely dominated the home console space this generation to this point. And to put that into perspective in terms of what that means for Nintendo's business, I mean, consider that the runner-up to the Wii, the 360, that has sold about 64 million units. Nintendo's fifth gen console, the Nintendo 64, that sold through 30 million units globally in its lifetime. So basically, the current difference in lifetime sales between the Wii and the Xbox 360 accounts for the total lifetime sales of Nintendo 64. And with Nintendo GameCube selling about 21 million units globally throughout its lifetime in the sixth generation, I mean, the Wii, as of January 2012, has basically outsold the GameCube's lifetime sales 5 times over. And so the future for Wii might be limited as a budget system aimed to the very, very young and total newcomers, but effectively, Nintendo's maxed out the potential for the Wii. And with Nintendo having redesigned and marketed Wii from the beginning as a low-cost, low-performance system by 6 years ago standards, the hardware is definitely starting to show its age, and the long-term Wii owners, the casual, the core, they're all hungry for new experiences. They're hungry for high-def output, hungry for renewed novelty, support for multi-platform releases that the Wii was never even considered for. I mean, it makes too much sense for Nintendo not to be preparing for a new console to succeed the Wii, regardless of what the other manufacturers may or may not be planning. Microsoft and Sony, on the other hand, their current systems right now have sold between 60 and 65 million units each globally, and while the outstanding 90 million unit success of the Wii, that may be a unique occurrence, but it still stands to reason that Sony and Microsoft perceive at least 10 to 20 million more units each to be sold before the last 360s and PS3s roll out of the factories. So, if you're Microsoft or you're Sony and you've based your business to this point primarily on the active, passionate, hardcore who live for deep games and extreme challenges amongst their traditional genres, I mean, how do you max out the potential for your already available HD systems in the back half of their lifespan? You do that with value. You make your system affordable. You make well-known signature must-have games from throughout your system's lifespan readily available at lower prices. And you have to keep new must-haves pouring in to sweeten the pot for the newcomers and to keep your core satisfied and interested in your system. I mean, it's critical here to remember that the mantle of casual gamer is not exclusive to the sorts of gamers who only play party games and fitness games. I mean, this is that very recent, very short-sighted conception of casual gamers that makes the mistake of ignoring the fact that millions of gamers, millions, the types of gamers who were playing before the Wii came out, who enjoy traditional genres and playstyles like platformers and shooters and racing games and fighting games, they don't necessarily play games for hours every week as a primary hobby in the hardcore manner. They might just turn on their systems for short bursts of fun in, amongst those traditional genres. And since, so if casual these days is going to be exclusive to the party game and the mini game crowd, so let's call this intermediate audience, let's call them the softcore gamers. So hardcore, softcore, and casual. So if in the back of a system's lifespan, I mean, it's no secret, you maintain the base of hardcore early adopters with new games, you expand out into the softcore and the casual at the same time, and you win their attention with value and with novelty. And there's no shame in that. I mean, Xbox Connect, the PlayStation Move, they've sold 11 and close to 9 million, 11 and 9 million units respectively. And if Sony and Microsoft can triple the unit sales of their motion control systems, and that's more than plausible this generation, that would put Move and Connect into the realm not just of peripherals and attachments, but of actual game platforms. And Move and especially Connect, they not only sell to owners of the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, but in the case of Connect, they attract new gamers who invest in the console with the primary intent of using those motion systems. So whether you were already owned a 360 or PS3, or whether or you're a newcomer, having a Move or a Connect under your roof, that automatically puts you in the market for an entire suite of motion-enabled games you otherwise would not have been, in the audience for. So, and really, this is a page right out of Nintendo's playbook in the sixth generation as how Nintendo ran GameCube between mid 2004 and late 2006. And that's when we saw the Donkey Kong games, the DK Jungle Beat, and the microphone attachment for Mario Party. And we saw a whole bunch of budget re-releases of key Nintendo GameCube games. I mean, it really wasn't even just GameCube pushing for the softcore and the casual in the back half of the sixth generation. PS2, they redesigned their system, they dropped the price, they expanded their greatest hits library, and they pushed novel forms of interaction with the iToy motion control camera. I mean, Microsoft, on the other hand, at the time, they were too busy fueling up for the early launch of the 360 to really pursue that back half strategy. But at this point, January 2011, with the 360 and PS3 6 and 7 years old in 2012, and with both Sony and Microsoft appearing to be fully in swing, not to transition to new systems, but in back half mode for their current consoles. I mean, appealing to the soft core and the casual while seemingly pushing back against any conjecture about 8th gen consoles for the foreseeable future. I mean, I've said it before, but I'll go into detail now. Graphics have plenty of room for improvement, but the fact is, compared to every previous generational improvement between console generations, the graphic improvement we could expect between today's HD consoles and the theoretical higher-end 8th gen consoles that are going to, you could expect those in late 2013 or much later, the difference between those generations is going to be more marginal and incremental than ever before. At the same time, the costs and the expenses for developers to hire those artists and programmers to utilize a system to its full potential to get those graphics up to those high-end standards, those costs are going to increase, and that cost, it's naturally going to be passed on to the consumer on the sticker price of retail games on store shelves. And the hardware itself is naturally going to be more expensive, and the manufacturers are not only going to have to assure their third parties that those risks are worthwhile, but they're going to have to market from scratch a new system and a new brand and convince the consumer to buy into that. And right now, Sony and Microsoft, they're acting as though they don't even want to approach that hurdle until they've maxed out the potential for their current HD systems. I mean, they could be playing coy, they could have a surprise in store for E3, but it does not seem like that right now in January 2012. Sony and Microsoft, they've already basically relaunched the brands for their current systems before with redesigns and with new motion systems, and based on what's known as of January 2012, they both seem intent on sticking to their guns with their currently available systems. Meanwhile, Nintendo's planning a new system in the immediate future, having already maxed out the potential for the Wii beyond all expectations, having matched the sales of their entire sixth generation nearly 5 times over, while their competition sees millions of units of their 7th gen system still to be sold before even seeding the public with excitement for 360 and PS3 successors. So, Sony's going to be targeting Xbox owners. Microsoft's going to be targeting PlayStation 3 owners. They both have their sights set on Wii owners as major Wii releases peter out in 2012. They're going to also have their sights set on the softcore and the casual gamers who haven't picked up any HD system yet. And Nintendo is going to be aiming at absolutely everyone with Wii U. And they're all going to be doing that based mainly on their exclusive games and exclusive experiences and play styles, and not on graphics and horsepower. I mean, it's definitely a unique situation we're in right now. So, what we all expected to be the so-called 8th generation, is that just going to be the 7th gen HD systems vying for attention with an HD newcomer from Nintendo? How long can Sony and Microsoft expect to keep the spotlight on their currently available systems when the public knows successors on those systems are already under works, behind the scenes? I mean, will the hardcore get bored and impatient with HD systems they've known inside and out for the better part of a decade? Is the prospect of featuring the definitive versions of today's multi-platform releases in addition to first and third-party exclusives enough to woo over 360 and PS3 gamers over to Wii U? I mean, will the casual or soft core outside the Nintendo fan base fork over $300 or more for a new Nintendo system when the competition has an established reputation and a larger library of inexpensive games? I mean, in the long term, when theoretical PS3 and 360 successors do come to market, will their visuals and horsepower alone be enough to demonstrate an improvement to gamers beyond the hardcore graphics connoisseurs significant enough to convince them to spend $400 or more on a new system with more expensive software? I mean, I don't know, but at E3 2012, I think we could start to piece together how things are going to develop from here on out. And all I can say with absolute certainty is expect to be surprised. Thank you for watching.